As you've just seen, Cabinet could hardly be called a threat to national security. And Channel 4 certainly didn't think so. So why was it banned? Cabinet wasn't the first programme in the Secret Society series to suffer this fate. When the contents of another episode, Zircon, were revealed, the results were rather more dramatic.
Once inside, the detectives began a lengthy search.
The Zircon programme had revealed the secret plan for Britain to launch its own spy satellite. Special Branch searched my house, looking for evidence of a leak. The New Statesman magazine published the Zircon story. Its turn came next. The police search lasted 5 days. The BBC's Scottish headquarters in Glasgow were next on the list. The Special Branch were ordered to remove every tape, film, script and scrap of paper for secret society. Despite a month of extensive police activity, most of the BBC's films and tapes were soon returned. 9 months later, it was announced that there would be no charges over the Zircon affair. The Zircon film itself was returned to the BBC at the end of 1987 and transmitted a year later. There was no outcry. But the Cabinet programme has never been seen on television until tonight. So what was the fuss about?
I didn't think it was a brilliant piece of work, but it contained some very good things. I saw nothing wrong with it in terms of transmission.
But okay to go out in the air?
Absolutely, no problem, yeah.
Secret Society brought to a head a long-running row between the BBC governors and Alasdair Milne. They didn't like being under fire from the government, and they didn't like the kind of people Milne was letting work for the BBC.
One of them described you as a destroyer, and there was a lot of worrying and huffing and puffing, particularly when Hussey arrived. I was determined that if we were going to have a showdown with the board again after Real Lives, that it wouldn't just be one voice, but all the editorial power that we could bring to bear in it.
You'd written to the governors to say you'd approved 5 and put 1 aside, and then this was announced. And then something rather catastrophic happened.
The next board meeting on January the 29th, there was a bit more huffing and puffing about Secret Society, but the decision had been made. As far as I was concerned, it had anyway. But at the end of that board meeting, I was called in by the chairman and the vice chairman and told that I was to leave immediately. And so I left the BBC that very day on the 29th of January 1987, while the Special Branch were just about to launch their attack on Broadcasting House in Glasgow.
In your autobiography, you talk about being hounded by the governors in your last weeks in the BBC. What was going on?
The governors, as I say, a number of them disapproved of the BBC hiring you anyway. They were extremely tense about the possible outcome of the individual programs. They raised the issue at every board meeting till I went. And they were pretty grumpy about the whole thing. Hounding is, I think, a fair description. Over a period of time, the governors had been appointed from a particular spectrum of the political world.
The spectrum being?
The ruling Conservative Party.
It had nothing to do with me. It's only a matter for the BBC.
Did he resign because of political pressure, Mrs.
Not
Thatcher?
to me. No, only a matter for the BBC.
But Mrs. Thatcher didn't seem unhappy about the peremptory manner in which the governors had disposed of their Director General.
I was furious. I mean, apart from the fact it was a very considerable shock, I was just very, very angry because I don't believe people should be treated like that. And there must be better and more elegant ways of parting company than simply being called in and thrown out in your ear, no?
Naturally, we've asked the BBC Board of Governors and the individual governors who were critical of Alasdair Milne in 1986 and 1987 to respond to his comments. But the BBC Board, Chairman Marmaduke Hussey, and all the governors we approached declined to be interviewed. It is clear, however, that Secret Society was only the latest in a series of incidents where they felt that as Director General, Alasdair Milne had not given them sufficient warning of trouble that could lie ahead. Now, 4 years have passed since Cabinet was first made, and it's still lying in the BBC's vaults. Why? The BBC has given a number of different reasons over the last few years. Reason 1, March 1987.
The 5 programmes are still not ready for transmission. Genuine legal problems have to be overcome.
Reason 2, May 1987.
We still have some legal and editorial questions to be answered. It is not the result of outside pressure of any kind.
Reason 3, January 1988.
The BBC decided not to transmit the programme in the period immediately prior to the general election because it dealt with controversial political issues.
Reason 4, July 1988.
New information was advanced about events in 1978 and 9 and 1982 and 3 with which the programme dealt. It would need a great deal of work to update and complete the programme before it could be offered again for transmission.
At the same time, the BBC announced that the Zircon programme would now be transmitted. So what was the new information that meant that Cabinet couldn't be shown?
I do not think it would be useful at this stage to detail the new information which followed publication in the New Statesman and other places.
Wrote Mike Checkland in May of 1989. In October 1989, I met Director General Mike Checkland when he spoke at this fashionable Soho club. I offered to buy the Cabinet programme from the BBC. The answer was a flat no. And a very senior BBC source told me that there was, in fact, no new information. That was just a little story they'd made up. Last year, Channel 4 offered to buy the original Cabinet programme from the BBC. Their offer was rejected. No reason was given. The programme you have just seen was remade from the transcript of the version approved in 1987 by Alasdair Milne. You've seen the script, you've seen the new programme. Would you approve that for transmission on the BBC? Were you still Director General?
Yes, from what I've seen, if anything, it looks a bit sharper than the first one was. So from what I've seen, it would seem to me wholly transmittable, yes.
And can you see any reason why now in 1991 the BBC should not unearth its own copy and put it out?
No?
So why not unearth Cabinet from the vaults? The BBC told us last month.
The Cabinet programme within the BBC Secret Society series was not banned. Any suggestion that this programme was banned is totally misplaced. The BBC decided not to transmit the programme in the period up to the 1987 general election because it dealt with controversial political issues. Later, following new information about the events Cabinet covered, it was decided by the executive producer of the series and the management of BBC Scotland that the entire programme would need to be remade to make it suitable for transmission.
The BBC never did remake Cabinet. Channel 4 has. Of course, we'd like to have added in the new information, but the BBC hasn't told us what it is. The subjects that Cabinet covered have remained, nevertheless, a continuing source of controversy, after the ban just as before, such as the question of the information about CND MI5 staff passed to the Ministry of Defence. All the information that MI5 passed to the Special Department DS-19 was unclassified. But what information did they pass? And was it used by Michael Heseltine for party political purposes? The answers to these questions, like so many others, are locked away, buried inside the MI5 offices behind me. Buried, like the Cabinet programme itself, because in 1991, as in 1987, Britain remains a secret society.
If you have strong views on that or any other of the programmes in Channel 4's banned season, please write to Reply, Channel 4 Television, 60 Charlotte Street, London W1P 2AX.